Hello everybody and welcome to MC Magic, or I guess they'll be changing their name soon to Palace Network. I believe the latest news is that they've been acquired by Palace Network, so that's really exciting. Today I'm going to talk about a topic that hopefully I didn't use too much of a clickbait title, Future Rob, when you're editing this video, but it is a topic based on a rumor that I had read on my channel earlier this week. Now, before I talk about the rumor, I should clarify you need to take this rumor with the biggest grain of salt. Not even a grain of salt, a pile of salt. In fact, it's so much of a rumor that I personally don't believe it or think there's any weight to it. However, it did inspire some really cool thought on whether or not it, if it were true. And so I wanted to make today's video about what it would be like if the rumor were true. And so the rumor was, and I had read this from a comment left on my channel, was that the Tower of Terror here in Florida will be getting a re-theme, but it won't be Guardians of the Galaxy themed, it'll be Doctor Strange themed. Now, there are a number of reasons why I think this is a completely false rumor. Number one being Doctor Strange just came out. Marvel and Disney have no real gauge yet as to the longevity of a franchise like Doctor Strange, so they're not about to go ahead and change one of their most classic rides for it. Now, some of you might be saying, well, look at Guardians of the Galaxy in California, but I can assure you that the way Guardians performed at the box office shows a lot better signs of longevity than what we've seen with, like a week now of Doctor Strange. So it's sort of a different situation. Not to mention, it seems like they're positioning Guardians of the Galaxy to be more of a standout franchise than even like the normal Avengers stuff out there. It's very recent, and I just don't think it's the sort of thing. The fact that it's a rumor coming from somebody on a comment who said they heard it from somebody they know who works at the parks, yada, yada, yada. It's just like a perfect setup to be completely made up. So I don't actually think it's true. I don't think there's any weight to it, which is sort of why I apologize if I end up using like a clickbaity title that makes it sound like it's going to happen or it might happen. But I started thinking about like, well, what would happen if there was a Doctor Strange re-theme of this Tower of Terror? My first thought is, no, that doesn't sound like it's right. It just sounds like they would be just taking whatever the newest Marvel thing is and slapping it on the Tower of Terror. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized it might make for a better re-theme than even the Guardians of the Galaxy would be. And I guess I know a lot of people think Guardians will make a horrible re-theme, but I mean, that's yet to be seen. But I think Doctor Strange could be a really fantastic re-theme of the Tower of Terror. And so I wanted to go ahead and talk about what I think they could do with this to make it almost like a revisiting Disney, an old series I used to do where I'd pretend, we had to replace things. And I think this is one of those instances here. So, I mean, starting up here, I think, let's say with the exterior, first of all, very simple. All you have to do is retheme this building from a hotel in California in the early 30s to one of the, I forgot what they call them. Like, they were like the gates. There are 3 gates on Earth, one in Hong Kong, one in London, one in New York, and the 3 of them combined protect us from all these mystical threats. And so the one in, I believe, well, actually in all of them are just like big buildings. And so I think this could be one of them, where at the top you have that big symbol. And sorry if this all seems confusing if you haven't seen Doctor Strange, but, I won't spoil anything. I'll say that much. Let's go ahead and get in the queue here. I think this queue area here in the line could be not the actual, well, it could either be inside that gate area, whatever that building looks like. They all look pretty interesting. Or it could have been, their training area, it takes place somewhere in the East. I forget the country specifically, but I think that would be a really cool way to stage the queue. I think this room could itself be part of the attraction. Now, of course, this room is part of the attraction with Tower of Terror. You're getting the whole show with the Rod Serling. But essentially what you're doing here is standing in a room looking at a little television screen in the corner. I'm saying this room could become part of the attraction in that, like, go big, right? I think the biggest selling point of Doctor Strange is that it has these Inception-inspired, mind-bending sort of twists in reality and sort of the laws of nature that we know, whether it's gravity or which way's up, which way's down, that sort of thing. And I think this would be a cool room to introduce that. You could have like a green version and an orange version, much like Mission Space, depending on how motion sick people get. But like on the orange version, maybe use some of that projection technology, use, large format screens to really throw people off and have like all of these features of the room changing and sort of warping from one area to another. Now, think Rock and Roller Coaster. That queue area, the pre-show with Steven Tyler and the rest of Aerosmith, is sort of it's regular room of a recording studio, but there's a screen in the back that looks like the other side of the glass, and it's recorded. Imagine something like that, where part of this room is real, but then there are a bunch of really large format screens that show the extension of the room, and with that, and with some of the amazing animating talent that, Disney has for their movies, you could go ahead and you could have everything shifting and turning and twisting and, doing the sort of stuff that this movie is already sort of known for. This part of the queue, I'm going to be honest, I didn't actually think about this part of the queue yet. But this could continue. Like, maybe, I think the benefit of a movie like Doctor Strange, if you haven't seen it, he does this thing where he like waves his hand and he can open a portal that goes somewhere else, is that you can have these different parts of the ride being completely different areas, and it doesn't break the illusion, it doesn't break the narrative of Doctor Strange, because that's something that they can do in that world. So let's say after that area, rather than just the doors opening, one of the portal opens, and you could have like a little screen around the edges of the door that shows the spirally sparks. And you go through and maybe you're somewhere else. And now maybe here's where you're in like the Hong Kong gate building. I really wish I'd looked up the names of this stuff beforehand. And maybe the premise of the story is you're going to help Doctor Strange, or you're with Doctor Strange and you're going on a mission. And so you can have this really elaborate queue area here that is completely different from the elaborate queue area of the lobby, and different itself from the room that you go in, because all three can be in completely different areas, and that gives you a lot of space for sort of creativity and mixing things up a bit. And it still doesn't break that narrative, which is really great. And I'm trying to stretch things out while we wait for the ride to start here. But this is where I started to think about the idea of a Doctor Strange Tower of Terror. And it was really with the drop, when I thought about like, well, how do you take an elevator drop and you make that a ride that has anything to do with Doctor Strange? And the answer is, I believe, gravity. Well, that sounds so silly now that I'm saying it out loud. Obviously, it's gravity. But if you've seen any of the trailers for Doctor Strange, part of these action sequences involve them not only, twisting and bending these cities, but twisting and bending the very nature of gravity, whether it's within a small area of a hallway or this larger area of an entire city. So maybe you're not falling down, but you're falling in every direction but down. And so in this scene here, you can have these elaborate sort of action sequences. You've got this hallway down here, and using the screen technology that's sort of used here, you could have a fight going on. And again, really heavy up on the idea of like hallways turning inside out and extending and fighting. Like, take this visual spectacle of a Doctor Strange action sequence and enlarge it onto these giant screens and put it right in front of our faces so it feels like we're in that battle. And again, this ride becomes not great for the faint of heart when it comes to motion sickness, because you'd be changing a lot of these perspectives. But here, again, another opportunity where we can do this. Take out this floating stuff and like the really blurry screen that shows your photo, and just line this area with a mixture of like screen elements that are showing these hallways twisting and turning and like clockwork opening up and extending, but also add in some real actual elements. You could build practical effects of props that are moving along the walls or stretching out or doing things that seem mind-bending, but are really, really cool to see in person. And then you get to the exciting part, the drop, and it can be outside of the building. And here's the idea. You're not dropping because you're falling off the ledge. Maybe you're dropping because the entire city just shifts on its side. Now, the one thing I don't know how to deal with is I feel like this ride, it's critical to have that view outside of the parks, but that can be the only touch of reality you see. And the part that really excited me about the prospect of this ride is we know this as an attraction where you just fall up and down in this dark corridor, in this dark elevator shaft. But what if it wasn't dark? What if it was the opposite of dark? It was extremely bright. And again, and I keep going back to this technology, but I think it's key to sort of the experience you'd have in a ride like this. But have these screens showing the skyline of a city, and every time you drop, you see things shift. So now, yeah, we're going up and down, but from what we're seeing, it looks like we're falling left to right, as if gravity's pulling us left to right or upside down. And have it, every time it goes up and down, have everything rearranged like clockwork and reset. And the idea of you going back up and down isn't because, you know, well, I guess there is no real in-story explanation for the Tower of Terror, but the story explanation in the Doctor Strange would be they keep changing, you know, the nature of gravity, and so it keeps throwing you around. Or maybe Doctor Strange defeats whatever villain that he's fighting in this. I don't know the Doctor Strange villains that well because I'm not a big fan of the comics, haven't read it very much. But then, you know, it results in him, you know, winning, saving the day, and then as we're pulling back here, again, go back to that technology of mixing real live elements and these screen elements, and have the room not shifting in a crazy way, but coming back together into a normal way, so that when you exit the elevator or whatever the ride vehicle becomes, you are now back in, you know, our normal, sane reality. And then again, you could throw this to being the London. This could be the London Gate building. You know, maybe you have Hong Kong in the second queue line, you have New York in the first, and now we're in the London queue. And so, again, another opportunity to retheme all this stuff very differently. And then, you know, in the spirit of Disney, go ahead and just stuff this room full of merchandise to buy. Doctor Strange merchandise and Marvel merchandise and stuff like that. Now, obviously, a lot of potential roadblocks to something like this. You've got to... one, figure out the whole mess of a contract between Universal and Disney and what they can do and can't do. You know, the latest talk is that because, you know, Guardians of the Galaxy is outside of the realm of the Avengers, they might be able to be allowed in the parks, of which Doctor Strange would also fall into that category. Kinda. I mean, you know, Doctor Strange might get himself involved in the Avengers. Who knows? They exist in that same universe. Of course, I still think there'd be backlash. People would definitely, if they thought, you know, a shift to Guardians was too soon, because Guardians isn't an old movie, they would definitely feel that way with Doctor Strange. But I don't know, like, that was an idea based off of a ridiculous rumor, but it was an idea nonetheless that started with me going, nah, that would never work. And then thinking about it and going, you know what? I think it could work, and I think it'd be really cool. And then just the ideas started sparking off. And I think the lesson here, the lesson I would like to impart in this video, besides... Disney, if you're ever looking for an idea, man, hit me up. I'm always willing to discuss things. We shouldn't just shut down ideas immediately, just based on our gut reaction. I think when the news of the Tower of Terror in California changing dropped, a lot of people were very angry very quickly because they loved the Tower of Terror as it was, and they were afraid of it changing and not being what they remember it by. And they thought right off the bat that a Guardians version would never be as good. But I think we should give those ideas a chance, and I think we should wait these things out and recognize that ideas have the potential at the very start. They always have the potential to be great, you know, and I hope, if anything, people walk away from this thinking, you know, next time they hear news of a ride being rethemed or being closed for something else, which is undoubtedly going to happen in both Disney World and Disneyland. That's just the nature of these parks. They're meant to change. That you remember that just because something you love is going away doesn't necessarily mean that what's going to replace it is going to be awful. It could very much be great. Anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you all for just indulging me in my weird ideas. And it was really fun to sort of go back to the old concept of revisiting Disney. If you want to see more Disney videos just like this, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I do 3 videos a week. If you want to see even more Disney content outside of my YouTube videos, I co-host a Disney podcast with my good friend Christine called the Tomorrowland Transit Authorities. It comes out every Friday, and you can find all the links in the description below to all of that stuff. Have a great week, whatever you're doing. Make the most of it, and I hope to see you all next time. Bye, everybody.